Early Breakfast with Rosie Wright on Times Radio with Elevon.
You're listening to Early Breakfast. We'll go through the papers next. They are just the most stunning set of front pages, of course. Britain really paid tribute yesterday, VE Day, and the fly past. Lots of photographs of the royals, particularly craning over to see the more details of the fly past from the Buckingham Palace balcony. We will go through those papers next. You are listening to Early Breakfast on Times Radio with me, Rosie Wright, sponsored by Elevon.
Early Breakfast with Rosie Wright on Times Radio with Elevon. Your world of payments. Find out more at elevon.co.uk.
And you can just see the royal family leaning over the balcony to try and get the very best view, of course, of that fly past yesterday. I wonder how you marked VE Day, the 80th anniversary. The anniversary's date is actually this Thursday, so we'll have lots of coverage for you here live on Times Radio. But I think because of the bank holiday weekend, we sort of split the celebrations in two. That's why yesterday, as the Times says, Britain gave it soaring tribute, a fantastic photograph looking at Buckingham Palace. Other front pages, though, the Times has Benjamin Netanyahu's words, the Israeli Prime Minister, saying Israel will seize all of Gaza and stay there. That's the vow from Netanyahu. Also, they've got that visa curb story that we've just been talking about with Terry. The Guardian say Number 10 are rethinking the fuel payment cut as the local election losses alarm MPs. And talking of alarm, the Telegraph lead today saying Britain is secretly preparing for a direct military attack by Russia amid fears the country's not ready for war. Well, let's go through these stories in a bit more detail. Andrew Eborn, the barrister, broadcaster, founder of Octopus TV, is here. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. Welcome back from your treks on the Downs. It's
yes,
lovely to have you.
It meant I didn't sort of throw myself into the VE Day celebrations as much as I would quite have liked, but I walked past lots of villages that were hosting street parties. I mean, it was a glorious day yesterday. Not weather-wise, but in terms of the emotion.
Oh, fantastic. United the nation. I was right in the heart of London. I went down to the Mall. I was by Big Ben when it struck 12. And on the 80th anniversary, so Winston Churchill's words still ring true. In the long years to come, not only will the people of this island, but of the world, wherever the bird of freedom chirps in human hearts, look back to what we have done, and they will say, do not despair. It was a wonderful day. The whole of London was united. I saw the flyover. I saw the fantastic bands. And the crowds were just united in remembrance, capturing the triumph of freedom over tyranny.
Yeah, I think some people, it kind of caught them by surprise, didn't it, that VE Day was coming up, the 80th anniversary. But when people realised, I think we did a good job.
Oh, I think that's absolutely, and you think about it, this is probably the last really big, obviously, anniversary, because obviously the people concerned, they're ageing and so on and so forth. It is absolutely reminds us about the importance of the people who serve this country. And you look at where we are at the moment, and they say, look, history should never repeat itself because we have to learn the lessons from history. And the more we hear about the stories, the more we hear about the sacrifices that were made by these people to give us the freedoms that we enjoy today. It is so important. But as you rightly said, I mean, the big day is actually on Thursday, but they've got a number of days where we will be looking back and remembering.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a brilliant week's worth of coverage here on Times Radio as well. Shall we talk about just hearing that echo of Churchill's words? The front page of the Telegraph, the Prime Minister preparing for an attack by Russia. I mean, in some sense, that's not really a surprise, is it?
Well, it is not a surprise. And I always say when they sort of turn around and say, oh, you know, it's the secret. It's a secret to plans. Well, it's a secret, but it's splashed all over the front page of a national newspaper. It is a concern. What they're doing is they've been asked to update what's a 20-year-old contingency plans that will put the UK on a war footing after threats of attack by the Kremlin. And this is apparently a classified dossier which will set out how the government would respond to a declaration of war. And obviously the things like bunkers to protect the cabinet and royal family, public service, broadcast, and the stockpiling of resources. It's a lot of fear. This is the problem about us. We're sort of telling the world we're not really prepared, which is not a good message. And when you talk about secrets, it's obviously, I say, it's not a secret if it's splashed all over our national newspapers.
Well, I guess that what isn't a secret is that they've got to produce a plan, but the details of the plan are secret, is, I think, the essence of it. The challenge here, Andrew, is, and even just in the last in the last month or so, there's been several global events that make you realise, some of our critical infrastructure is really vulnerable, whether that was sort of Heathrow Airport being checked out for, 12 hours or so. Look what just happened in Spain and Portugal and France. And the paper says experts have warned the UK is vulnerable to an assault on its critical national infrastructure. That could be gas terminals, undersea cables, nuclear power plants, transport hubs. I mean, some real areas of weakness have been exposed just in the last few weeks.
Oh, no, that's absolutely right. And this is, as you say, not just that. Anytime you see these attacks and we have a single point of failure and the whole thing just collapses. And whilst I advocate around the world about technology, we have examples all the time where people over-rely on technology. You don't have a backup plan. If that technology fails or we're subject to a cyber attack, and there have been lots of those, then what happens in those disasters? So whilst, yes, the details may be confidential, clearly these are areas that need to be addressed.
Yeah, let's talk about cyber attacks. Inside the Times today, they say M&S and Co-op cyber attackers tricked IT into resetting passwords. What this is called is social engineering an attack. Tell us what that is. It's when effectively they're relying on someone like you or me who's got a password to make a mistake.
Yeah. Well, this is the single point of failure. It's not the technology that failed, but actually human error. And they've got this scattered spider network, which is the group which may have been behind the hacking, claimed to have tricked IT help desks. And what they do, they pose as a legitimate employee, and they do these sort of social engineering attacks on the Co-op that allow them to reset an employee's password. And then that's used to breach the network, because that's the error, if you like. So what's bizarre is that they managed to trick these IT desk into saying, look, I'm a real employee. Can you reset my password? And once that's been reset, obviously they gather information about all sorts of dangerous things. And I always say that data is the new currency, and the information that we give out to people is alarming. And what hackers do, I can warn people about this, they gather information about employees from social media and things like that. The information that we share to the public, you need to be incredibly careful, because that will be used to get all sorts of access to all sorts of other things. They also do this thing called SIM swapping, and what this is, they gain access to phone numbers from this is how they do it, and they pretend basically to convince or bribe a mobile operator to issue the same number to a different SIM card. So when they phone up these IT desks, people think, oh, hang about, this is the right phone number. They impersonate their employee and they get their password reset. It's a wake-up call for all of us.
Yeah, you say it's not the computers that make the problem or the systems, it's the humans. But, these systems are designed to be used by humans who are going to make a mistake. I mean, I dread to think if you were the person who, reset your password, but actually the system isn't secure enough if it has that vulnerability in it.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. In the same way as people allow access to private conversations about military operations, as we had in the States, it tends to be human error. But you're right. We need to safeguard against human error and make sure there are sort of appropriate additional safeguards in place. So that's what they're going to be looking at. It's going to be very embarrassing for the IT departments and so on and so forth. But they do need to be aware that there is this risk. And so they need to make it a lot tighter than it currently is.
Now, let's talk about reform. Obviously, they are riding high off the back of results of the local elections on Friday morning. Councils run by Reform, being written up in the Times here, will only be able to fly the Union Jack or the St George's Cross from the buildings. That's what Reform's party chairman said. Bit of a row developed then, because it means they won't be able to fly, for example, the Ukrainian flag. I mean, do you think they've made the wrong decision here?
Oh, I think it's very predictable. Following the turquoise tidal wave that we saw in the local elections, they have to make their marks, continue to grab those headlines. And this was an issue that a lot of people get concerned about, is hanging out there far too many flags out there. But you're quite right. A number of the councils have been flying the Ukrainian flag. We talked about the VE Day parade. One of the biggest round of applause was for a small group of Ukrainian soldiers who were marching. But basically what they've got 10 councils now under the party's control will not allow any other flags to be displayed. Now, there'll be a number of people who will support that, and they will say, look, this is to stop all the other flags that we see every now and again, and people who are very proud, obviously, of our country's flags. But there will be those who turn around exactly as you say. This is Nigel Farage. He claims that Russia may have provoked or be being provoked into the invasion of Ukraine. And apparently this is Yusuf, the chairman, has been following orders from Nigel Farage to do this. So it's appealing to the hardcore side of reform, I would say, on that sort of basis.
But I think that's because they're concerned about other flags going up, not necessarily the Ukrainian flag. That seems to be sort of oversight in this policy. Trevor Phillips has written a brilliant piece, actually, saying political controversy will only get you so far, which is definitely well worth a read if you've got time this morning, maybe on your way into work. The royals, these fantastic photographs of everyone on the yes. balcony. Libby Purvis has written a piece today in the comment section of the Times saying, the royals need to offer Harry an olive branch. She says Charles and William could put an end to this nonsense by inviting the Duke and his family to a proper family reunion. Has she got the right idea?
Well, there's a famous saying goes, the first to apologise is the bravest, the first to forgive is the strongest, and the first to forget is the happiest. I think it's very sad when families have issues, all families have issues. To play it out in public in this way is particularly sad and particularly bitter. I mean, Harry's, every week, as you know, I do the Kevin O'Sullivan show called What Just Happened, and we always start looking at Harry and Meghan. It's the food, it's the fodder of the beginning of the programme. I think, as I say, I think it's very sad when families work in this sort of way. Harry is still washing all the dirty linen in public. Some of the comments he made in that interview he did for the BBC, I'm sure that the King would not want to have aired in public. But I think an olive branch would be great. I think the King, all our days are numbered, but obviously the King's been very public about his own health issues. It would be great to see a reconciliation. That's my personal view.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Donald Trump. We've got a bit of this to come in the business news, but Angelina Jolie's father apparently told Donald Trump to impose tariffs on foreign films. At the weekend, he pledged to impose a 100% levy on all films, quoting here, produced in foreign lands to prevent Hollywood dying a very fast death. I mean, that's going to really harm the British film industry if that happens.
Oh, it's absolutely. And something that I warned about very recently at a lunch at BAFTA is that talk about tariffs, well, it's going to hit our sector. And the film, TV and radio sector is worth $21 billion in the UK in 2023. It's close to 1% of the UK economy. And it basically employs 250,000 people. I mean, if you look at the British TV programme sales to the US alone is worth almost 600 million a year. And the reality is you get all these major movies, we give tax incentives for people to film over here, as indeed do other countries. So it's a policy that needs to be thought through, because at the moment it's too expensive for people just to film in the US, which is why you get lots of these big blockbusters coming over using the British film studios and so on and so forth. But like most of these things, we need to sort of turn around and say, is this a negotiating tool on behalf of Donald Trump? He's not going to basically get the whole of Hollywood back to its golden days just by closing down all sort of film business around the world. But it's a major concern. We've got the Cannes Film Festival coming up. I'm sure it's going to be a hot topic. But as I say, it's something that I warned about a number of weeks ago at BAFTA.
We're going to have a look in the business news of what impact that might have on the British entertainment industry in particular. Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew Eborn, the barrister, broadcaster, president of Octopus TV, going through the papers with me.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.